So, welcome to the Oxford Clay Pottery Podcast. I'm Catherine Tomlinson and I started an eco conscious pottery company called Oxford Clay. Now, at Oxford Clay, I don't just make pottery, I also make resources such as books and courses and information for other potters who want to be more eco-conscious in their pottery practice but maybe don't know where to start or can't find out the information they need. So that's what this podcast is all about. It's about sharing everything I've learned along my eco-conscious pottery journey with you, and I can't wait to get started. So let's go. Hello, welcome back to the Oxford Clay Pottery Podcast. I'm your host, Catherine Tomlinson, and in today's episode, we're going to be talking about something really, really cool in pottery that I really wanted to share with you because it has really kind of up leveled the way that I can decorate pottery. And I thought, yeah, it'd be such a cool thing to share with you. So, we're going to be talking about silicone molds. And so, usually in pottery, silicone molds are not used. And this is because clay needs a kind of absorbent surface to absorb the water out in order for it to be like released from a mold. So that is why plaster of Paris is normally used for slip casting and also press molds, because what happens is the plaster dries the clay out, so it draws in the water, and this shrinks the clay, and the clay just shrinks, and then it will come out of the mold. So that's a way of like that thing you've made getting released from the mold. So it might seem like you can't use silicone molds for pottery, and certainly if you're trying to kind of slip cast something, I've seen molds that are silicone molds for like concrete casting, and I had wondered, oh, I wonder if they could be used for like slip casting pottery, but I don't think that would be like I don't think it would work basically because if you're casting such a big thing, you would need the water to be drawn out of the clay in order to release that piece, unless you let it dry for a really long time. But yeah, we don't have time for that. So, yeah, but I do want to tell you about a really, really cool way you can use silicone molds in pottery, and it is absolutely brilliant. So, okay, so the silicone molds I'm talking about in this episode are from the catering industry. So they're from the cake decorating, catering, sugarcraft industry, and this is a huge industry. And there are companies that actually make silicone molds specifically for the purpose of sugar crafting for cakes. And, think of something that you might want to put on a cake, some kind of decoration, you name it, there's a sugar craft mold for it. So they can sometimes be called fondant molds as well. But you can use these for clay. So that's what was so exciting about these. Okay, so the way that you use a silicone mold and the way that sugar crafters will use it too, fondant crafters, is that you basically press your clay or fondant into the mold. You scrape off the back so it's flat, and that gives you the surface that you're going to attach to your cake or pot. And then you wait a little bit until it's dry enough to kind of come out of the mold. Did you want it to be too dry? Because then you can't like attach it to the pot, but you also don't want it to be too wet because then it won't release from the mold. So you'll kind of be able to tell that, time when you can sort of peel the silicone mold back a little bit and you can see that your clay piece is separating a little bit from the mold. And then it's probably safe to peel away the silicone mold. They're flexible. So it's a really good thing. So you can just like peel it back and then you're left with your beautiful piece of clay decoration that then you can attach to your pods. So in this episode, I wanted to talk to you about like the tips that I've learned through trial and error of using silicone molds in pottery, because there are a few things that just make them, a few tips that will just really like increase the kind of ease at which you can use silicone molds, because like I said, the silicone mold is not absorbing the water from the clay, so they can be a little bit more like sort of tricky to use in the sense that how do you release that thing that you've made in the silicone mold? How do you release it out so you can actually use it in your pottery? Okay, so step one is that what I found, I watched a video of someone like using silicone mold for sugar fondant, and I saw the technique they used, and I thought, oh, I wonder if that's the kind of technique I should be using with clay as well. So what I found was that it's a really good idea to put some kind of powder into the silicone mold before you put any clay in it, and not talking like a lot of powder, because if you fill it, if you obviously you don't want to fill up the kind of beautiful crevices of the mold, you just want to brush a teeny weeny bit of powder in there. And the powder that sugar crafters use is cornstarch, like see, like corn ground up, so it's like a white fluffy powder, and you they use it in catering to kind of thicken sauces and stuff. Cornflour, that's it. That's what I'm looking for. That's the word I'm looking for, cornflour. So what I do is I actually take the cornflour and I just brush it in with a large makeup brush that is synthetic. So I don't use any like animal products in my pottery. So I don't use like an animal hair makeup brush, but I found that you can get really good synthetic makeup brushes. And so what I do is I just take a little bit of the corn flour, brush it into the mold, and then you're left with a very light dusting of corn flour in the mold. Now, I think sugar crafters, when I watched a video on this, I saw that they actually have like a little bag, and they like just kind of puff the corn flour into the mold, and then that's how they do it. But yeah, I found just like makeup brush is like a very effective way of doing this. Okay, so that's my first top tip. Put some kind of like powder in the mold, just a tiny tiny bit, and then that will help your clay to release from the mold when it's time to release it. Okay, so my second top tip is that it's a really, really good idea to mix some paper in with the clay that you're going to be using in your mold. And that is because, so you might not have heard me talking about this before, but basically, paper clay is my kind of absolute favorite thing in the world. It's amazing. So it's the idea that you add a little bit of paper fibers to clay, and it increases its strength massively. And so you actually don't need much at all, just like maybe like a teaspoonful for like I don't know, maybe a kilogram of clay, a teaspoonful of kind of paper pulp would probably be enough, maybe a teeny weeny bit more. And you can use paper, you can use sort of kitchen roll. I use a bamboo kitchen roll that I just like mush up. You can mush it up by hand, or you can use one of those like electric stick blenders. They're really good for creating a kind of paper pulp in a liquid, and then you just drain off the liquid, and then you're left with this like beautiful like paper pulp that then you can just kind of wedge into the clay, like knead it into the clay. Just wedge it really, really thoroughly to just thoroughly distribute those paper fibers throughout the clay, and then you're going to be left with like a very, very strong clay. So it's very strong when it's drying, it's very strong when you're making stuff out of it. And it's a fantastic thing to use, because when you're trying to press very intricate shapes, having very, very strong clay is a really, really good idea. So yeah, so like I said, you can use any paper for this. You could even use, you could use newspaper, you could use tissue paper, toilet paper, just kind of, normal paper. um, but yeah, I use kitchen roll because I found that bamboo kitchen roll is sort of gives me a lot of strength for the kind of the amount I'm putting in. So it's really good. You can actually get commercial clay that's made by companies with fibers in. And sometimes they use fabric fibers, sort of flax, and you can use basically any kind of organic fiber in clay, and it will have the same effect. It'll add real strength to the clay. So yeah, so that's my second top tip, is to mix a little bit of paper in with the clay that you're pressing into your mold, and that will really increase the chances of you being able to get that shape out of the mold without it breaking. Okay, so my third top tip is that you want to attach your whatever, sprig, whatever you've made, really, really well to your pot. And something that can really help with this is vinegar. So I did a whole episode on vinegar and like all the different ways you can use it in pottery. But one amazing way you can use vinegar in pottery is that you can actually paint vinegar onto a pot, and then it will kind of like sort of melt. I guess the best way of describing it is going to melt the surface to mean that you can adhere something to it really, really well. So it's sometimes when you're pressing something in a silicone spread sprig mold, it's really thin. So what I found was sometimes if I painted vinegar on the actual thing I was attaching, I would end up kind of damaging it. But what's a really good idea to do is to paint it actually on the pot you're attaching it to. So you can just paint a little bit of vinegar, any kind of vinegar will do, with a paintbrush, and that will get the surface really ready for you attaching that sprig decoration to your pot. Another top tip is to, so this is kind of same kind of thing, like part three, tip three. In terms of attaching, is that it's a great idea to kind of use. So when I actually slip cast the pot, like I sent you before, like, this is the base of the pot is actually slip cast, and I actually use the same slip to attach the sprig. So if that's something you're doing, you've got a slip there anyway, then it's a great idea to like attach it all with the same kind of slip. If not, you can make your own slip just by like drying some clay and then just adding some water, and that will really help the clay to like break down. So um it's much easier than trying to mash like wet clay with water into a slip to use for attaching things. It's much easier just to let your clay dry completely, and then you can break it down again with some just some water, and it breaks down better with like warm water or hot water. It breaks down faster. So if you're in a rush, you really need your attaching slip, then you can get some dry clay and just put some hot water with it, and you'll get like a lovely attaching slip that you can use to attach your beautiful design that you've made in a silicone mold. Um, Okay, so the fourth tip, this is that once you've attached your decoration to your pot, because the the piece that you've attached is often quite like kind of small and thin and delicate, and your pot may be a bit thicker, there is a possibility of them drying out at different rates, and you really don't want that to happen, because that is the point where your sprig decoration can crack off your pot. So a really good thing to do after you've attached your decoration is to try and let the pot dry all at once together, but slowly. So what I do for this is I actually put them in a Tupperware box, and you can get these, kind of quite big sort of plastic boxes, maybe like a storage box with a lid. And I actually dry them in there just for maybe a day or so, just to kind of try and equalize like the sprig, the decoration, and the pot all together, so they're drying at the same rate. So that's such a good thing to do. If you just kind of dry them straight away on the shelf, I found that they can often like crack off. So it's a really good way, just while that pot is kind of I guess like it just needs a little bit of time to equalize all the kind of drynesses within it. So the sprig and the just the sprig, and also the main body of the pot. It kind of just needs a little bit of time just to equalize, how wet that clay is throughout, and then you can dry it kind of safely on a shelf. Okay, so the final tip for you for using silicone molds is that when you're extracting your little piece from the mold, your little like decorative clay decoration from the mold, a really good thing to do is to you turn the mold upside down. It's a really good idea to put it on top of a tea towel, and this will just give a really lovely soft surface for those pieces to be kind of falling out onto. So you kind of peel back the silicone mold, and you can see the design is separating, the piece of clay is separating from the mold, and then you're kind of just peeling it back, and then sort of they're kind of dropping out onto this soft surface of the tea towel. That just stops the pieces, the decoration, from getting damaged when they're sort of falling out of the mold. So yeah, peeling them back onto a tea towel is a really good way. I found that to be a really good way of kind of trying to maintain the integrity of the design. And it doesn't always happen. Sometimes you need to kind of like do it all over again. Yeah, I found that's a really good sort of gentle way of trying to get them out of the mold. It also stops them kind of like sticking together and stuff. They probably won't be that wet when you're peeling back the mold, but it's a good idea just to have a nice, cloth. They're all kind of separate on the cloth, and then you can pick them up, and then you're attaching them to the pot. Yeah, so that's my fifth top tip. And yeah, like I said to you, Absolutely love silicone molds. I use them in all my pottery, for decorations, and the world is your oyster in terms of like just all the different designs. They're absolutely amazing. So yeah, I hope this episode has been helpful in terms of like all the cool things you can do with silicone molds, like the top tips of how to use them. And yeah, thank you so much for joining me. It's been really lush, really lovely to talk to you about silicone molds, and I'll see you on the next episode. Goodbye. Oh, yeah. So I hope you enjoyed that episode. And if you're interested to learn more about eco conscious pottery or making your pottery more eco conscious and sustainable, there's so much for you on the Oxford Clay website, which is www.oxfordclay.co.uk. I can't wait to see you there.